Picture a bustling Chinese metropolis where the laws of physics seem negotiable, where urban planners look at seemingly impossible terrain and say, "Challenge accepted," and where millions of daily commuters experience something that defies every conventional notion of how cities should work. Welcome to Chongqing, home to one of the world's most extraordinary transit systems, a place where a massive monorail train doesn't stop for buildings, doesn't go around them, and doesn't wait for them to be demolished. Instead, it does something that sounds like pure science fiction. It swallows them whole. Deep in China's mountainous interior, Chongqing sprawls across a landscape that would make most city planners weep. Known as the Mountain City, this sprawling metropolis of over 32 million people clings to steep hillsides, wraps around river valleys, and challenges every assumption about how cities can grow. The Yangtze and Jialing rivers carve through the urban core like giant serpents, creating a three-dimensional puzzle of bridges, tunnels, and multi-level roads that stack on top of each other like an urban layer cake. In most cities, such extreme topography would limit development. In Chongqing, it has inspired engineering solutions that border on the miraculous. The most famous of these solutions sits in the Yuzhong district, where Liziba Station has become a pilgrimage site for architecture enthusiasts, engineering students, and utterly bewildered tourists. Every few minutes, something happens here that challenges everything you thought you knew about trains and buildings. A sleek, white monorail emerges from the urban landscape, approaches a perfectly ordinary 19-story residential building, and then, instead of stopping or turning, slides directly into the structure's midsection. The train doesn't slow down, doesn't announce its presence with dramatic fanfare. It simply disappears into the building as if the laws of physics had taken a coffee break. But this isn't some elaborate magic trick or optical illusion. It's the result of engineering audacity combined with urban planning necessity, creating what has become known worldwide as China's train-through-building phenomenon. Liziba Station occupies floors 6 through 8 of the Zhuangji building, creating a vertical transportation hub where residents live above and below one of the city's busiest transit lines. Every day, thousands of commuters ride through what might be someone's living room wall, while residents go about their daily lives just meters away from trains hurtling through their building. The story begins in the late 1990s, when Chongqing's rapid growth collided headlong with its impossible geography. City planners faced a challenge that would have stumped Solomon himself. They needed to build a rail line, connecting the city center to rapidly developing neighborhoods, but the proposed route ran directly through a location where a construction company had already purchased land for a residential high-rise. The terrain was so steep and complex that rerouting the rail line wasn't feasible. Moving it would require massive earthworks, demolition of existing structures, and engineering costs that would make the project economically impossible. In most cities, this would have meant choosing between housing and transportation, between private development and public infrastructure. But Chongqing's planners, perhaps influenced by the city's long history of defying geographical limitations, proposed something unprecedented. Why not build both? Why not create a building that could serve as both residential space and transit infrastructure simultaneously? The idea sounded insane. Traditional engineering wisdom suggests that trains and homes don't mix well. The vibrations, noise, and structural stresses of heavy rail transit would make residential living unbearable. Buildings are designed to be static, permanent, and stable. Trains represent motion, force, and constant dynamic loading. Combining them seemed like trying to marry fire and water. But Tianyi, the lead design engineer from Chongqing University's School of Civil Engineering, saw opportunity where others saw impossibility. The solution required revolutionary thinking about structural separation designing, the building and railway as completely independent systems that could coexist without interfering with each other. The track structure would be entirely separate from the residential building's framework, creating two buildings that happen to occupy the same space without ever actually touching. Construction began in 2000, with work proceeding simultaneously on both the residential building and the integrated transit station. The project employed a distinctive station bridge separation design concept, segregating the structural systems of the monorail station and the building to effectively mitigate potential structural issues and vibrations. This wasn't retrofitting a train line through an existing building, nor was it building a building around existing tracks. Instead, it was creating an entirely new category of architecture, a hybrid structure designed from the ground up to serve dual purposes. The engineering challenges were staggering. The building's first 5 floors house commercial space, while floors 9 through 19 contain residential apartments. But floors 6 through 8 exist in a liminal space between building and infrastructure, where the monorail tracks slice through the structure like a horizontal elevator shaft. The 6th and 7th floors contain the actual rail line, while the 8th floor serves as the passenger platform, creating a 3-story void in the middle of what is otherwise a conventional apartment building. Advanced noise reduction technologies became crucial, including rubber tires and pneumatic suspension systems that minimize vibrations and sound. The monorail uses inflatable rubber tires and airspring suspension, making the noise during operation much lower than the average 75.8 decibels, typically found on urban traffic arteries. The entire train system was redesigned with residential compatibility in mind, using materials and technologies that would make a washing machine seem noisy by comparison. The structural engineering required unprecedented precision. The track represents relative movement while the building remains static, with completely different applied forces and design requirements. Engineers had to create a system where a multi-ton monorail train could pass through a residential building hundreds of times per day, without creating vibrations that would rattle dishes in kitchen cabinets or disturb afternoon naps. When Liziba Station opened for trial operations on June 18, 2005, it represented more than a transportation milestone. It proved that the impossible was merely improbable. The station became unique as the first of its kind, with monorail trains going through the middle of a building while using specialized noise reduction equipment to isolate station noise from surrounding residences. Suddenly, Chongqing had created a new category of urban infrastructure, demonstrating that with sufficient engineering creativity, the constraints of geography and space could be transformed into opportunities for innovation. The visual impact of Liziba Station defies description until you witness it firsthand. Standing on the viewing platform across the street, watching a full-sized train emerge from what appears to be solid building facade creates a moment of cognitive dissonance that never quite fades. The train doesn't announce its presence with dramatic lighting or musical fanfare. It simply appears, slides through the building as if the structure were a tunnel, and continues on its journey along the Jialing River. Passengers inside barely notice they're traveling through someone's building, while residents above and below go about their daily lives as if having a major transit line pass through their building were the most natural thing in the world.